The first time I suspected my wife of infidelity was after my son Matt's 13th birthday. On my way home from work, I picked up some pictures from the drugstore. Julia wasn't home yet, so I sat down and looked at the pictures. What a beautiful day it was. Matt was so surprised when he got home, we found a surprise party with all his friends waiting for him, looking through the photos. I found a really nice picture of Matt and my friend Steve. It was a close-up of both of their faces. Steve has been my best friend my whole life. My kids call him Uncle Steve, and his kids call me Uncle John. We are so close. When I looked at the image of their faces side by side, I noticed something I hadn't noticed before. They had the same color hair, black, they had the same eye color, green, and they had the same narrow nose. They had similar skin tone and facial features. If I hadn't known they weren't, I would have sworn they were father and son. A few others were pictures of kids at a party, but my attention was caught by something in the background. There was Julia and Steve. They were in, I would say, a very intimate position. In fact, it looked like they were about to kiss, or had just kissed. I scrutinized the other photos for anything else where they were together, but couldn't find anything. I took the two pictures out of the bag and put them in a desk drawer in my home office. The fact that my son looked like Steve and that I had a picture of Steve and Julia in an intimate-looking pose proved nothing, but I immediately wondered if in hindsight I could recall any other evidence that Julia might have been unfaithful to me. I didn't have much time to think because a few minutes later, Julia walked through the front door, kissed me, and headed upstairs to change. It was something she did every day on her way home from work, and I'd never had any reason to suspect her before. With suspicion flashing through my mind, I headed up the stairs to see if I could catch her doing anything when I entered the bedroom. Julia was surprised to see me, but didn't act like my presence was unwelcome. "Hey, honey, how was your day?" Julia asked, changing into her house clothes. "Not too bad." I picked up the pictures from Matt's party. On the way, they turned out great. But didn't we take too many of them? 5 reels of film for a birthday party? I asked after all the trouble we went through to make him think he wasn't having a party, only to throw him a surprise party like this one. I wanted to make damn sure he had enough pictures to remember it by. Julia said it was great to invite all his friends, family, and even Steve, Mary, and their kids to the party. I said, did she flinch when I mentioned Steve's name? There was some movement, but was it natural or was it a reaction to the name being spoken? "Yeah, it was a great party," Julia said. "Other than a possible flinch, I didn't get anything else out of her. I decided I would keep an eye on her and Steve as much as possible to see if they were up to anything. I didn't use all the high-tech tracking devices, audio recording, video cameras, and phone tapping, at least not right away, but just started tracking. If Julie said where she was going to be, I would then find reasons to call and see if she was there or not." A few weeks later, the body of a missing little girl was found in the lake, and as luck would have it, her family had DNA testing done beforehand so that she could be identified in case anything happened. Julia gave me the perfect opportunity to find out what was bothering me, John. I think we should do these DNA cards for the children, too. If something ever happens and a body or body part is found, I'd want to know if it's our child or not. Wouldn't I? Julia asked. "You're absolutely right. This girl was missing teeth, and the body was pretty badly damaged, so normal methods didn't work. I think having the children's DNA on file is a wise decision." I said I would take all 4 of our children, Matt, Ashley, Hannah, and Sarah, to get tested and put them on file with the county once at the family doctor's office. I decided to make the request. "So, John, what happened?" Dr. Smith asked. "I would like copies of the tests. It's not that I don't trust the county in terms of keeping the information in case something happens and they need it. It's just that I feel better having copies of them in my home safe." I said, "Sure, John. No problem. Many parents make." The same request, Dr. Smith replied. 2 weeks later, I went out of town for a week on business there. I walked into a doctor's office with DNA tests to check myself out. The doctor, a woman I lived with for 8 years, claims I am the father of her 4 children and is now demanding child support from me. I have reason to believe that I am not the father of one or more of them. I have demanded DNA records of the children from her, and now I am asking you to tell me how many of them I should be financially responsible for." I said, "Of course, it's sad when someone says a child is yours when it's not. I've seen several marriages destroyed as a result of this." "Are you saying you are not married to this woman?" the doctor asked. "No, ma'am. We broke up 3 years ago. I'm married to someone else, and all this alimony actually pisses me off. I had the envelope with the results on it before I came home. I hadn't looked at them yet. And the closer I got to getting the results, the less sure I was that I wanted to know everything. When I got home Friday night, there was a note on the table from Julia saying that she and the kids had gone to her mom's for the weekend, unable to endure an entire weekend to figure out what to do if things were as bad as I feared. I decided to open the envelope, but only after calming my nerves with a glass of scotch. And when I saw the results, I immediately poured another one and drank it quickly. None of my 4 children were actually mine, but it was pretty clear that they had the same father, having had a good drink. I had fallen out around 4 in the morning. I woke up and started thinking about what I should do. I suspected that Steve was the father of my children, but I needed certainty. It was at this point that I decided to get into high tech. There is a store not far from my house that specializes in surveillance equipment. So on Saturday morning, I went there and bought the whole kit. I installed tiny motion-activated cameras covering every room in the house, sound recorders. I also had tracking devices to put in Julia's car and Steve's SUV. So I would always know where they both were. I set it all up so that the information was dumped to a computer in the basement that I could access from my laptop from anywhere. I had installed the tracking device on Steve's SUV on Saturday afternoon when he came by and took me with him, since I had called to say that Julia would be out of town all weekend. At least I was sure he wouldn't be with her this weekend. I spent most of Sunday morning going through Julia's things for anything that might give her away. As far as I knew, she didn't keep a diary or notes, and her computer looked clean. In the back of her closet was some sexy lingerie I hadn't seen before, for which was another piece of circumstantial evidence when Julia came home with the kids. On Sunday night, I greeted them all with a big hug that night in bed. Julia just blew me away. "John, you don't worry too much, but I think I'm pregnant." She said, "Pregnant?" I asked her. "Yeah, I think so. I plan to go to the doctor tomorrow to see what he says, but I have a feeling." Julia confirmed. At this point, I decided I was going to go to the doctor to get a fertility test, too. Julia and I had been trying to have a baby for a long time before she got pregnant with Matt. I took time off work to be able to nurse her as many times as possible. It was like that with all the kids. I know it's not easy to get pregnant. We went through all that for the first 4 kids, and now she got pregnant without even trying. That seemed suspicious to me. I drove to a neighboring town on Monday and went to a clinic where no one knew me. I took the test and waited. My sperm count was above average. This was just another fact to add to the pie. I had a high sperm count. My wife and I had tried many times to get pregnant, and yet it was Steve who impregnated her. I rushed back to work and accessed the information that had been gathered to that point. The tracking devices showed that Steve left for work and then drove to a hotel on the east side of town. Julia's car spent part of the time at the doctor's office and then went to the same hotel. I had seen enough. So I went back to work that night. Julia was so excited that she was pregnant that we were blessed with another child. I was holding back as hard as I could from spilling all the information I had and incriminating her. Over the next few weeks, I gathered even more information and decided that they had formed a pretty good routine. They met for a long lunch at the hotel on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. They always had the same room booked. I took pictures of them going in and out of it, and there was no need to see what was going on inside. This was because on Tuesday and Thursday, they would meet at our house and have sex in our guest bedroom. The more I saw, the harder it was for me to keep from slamming the door. Finally, after watching them for 2 months, I recorded a phone conversation that drove me crazy. "Hey, are you comfortable talking?" Steve asked. "Yeah, John's playing golf, and the kids are at their friends' houses." Julia replied, "I've been worried about JN lately. Hyun's been acting strange. Do you think he couldn't have found out everything?" Steve asked. "He hasn't figured out anything in years. Why would he figure it out now?" Julia asked. "As for Matt, he's becoming more and more like me every day," said Steve. "So what Johan thinks I'm the perfect wife. He'll never suspect I'm cheating on him, and he'll never believe that all 15 years I've been taking steps to make sure I only have children with you and not him," said Julia. "I'm still not sure I approve of that." Steve said, "Take it back now or you'll never touch me again, okay?" I take it back. "I can't wait until Monday." "Oh, baby, I can't Monday. I have a lunch meeting. It's a really big deal. So Tuesday, we're just going to need a really long lunch." "Okay, what time should I be there?" Steve clarified. "Around 11. "I'll see you then." Steve concluded the conversation. I listened to this conversation on Sunday. On Monday, I took enough information with me to start divorce proceedings based on adultery and went to see an attorney. "So, John, what grounds for divorce do you choose?" Dave asked marital infidelity. "Are you sure that's actually hard to prove in our state?" said Dave. "Well, maybe you can tell me if there's enough to prove it. Pictures of my wife and her lover in the process of sexual intercourse. I also have video, in fact, even some phone conversations recounting their affair, including one where my wife admits that she deliberately took steps to have children with her lover instead of me. And last but not least, DNA tests that show that none of the 4 children I am raising are mine. Is that enough?" I asked, "Yes, that should be more than enough." "I'll send your wife the divorce papers right away," Dave replied. "Can I pick the time and place where she gets the papers?" "What do you mean?" Dave asked. "Tomorrow at 11 o'clock she is supposed to meet her lover at our house. Can we make it so that she gets them at home, say at 11:30 or 11:45, handing over the papers at the time she commits adultery would be murderous evidence." "Yes, that's an acceptable idea. Would it be illegal to invite my wife's parents and sisters, a few of her friends, her lover's wife, and perhaps their bosses?" I asked. "I can see you're hungry for a little revenge. Well, if you tell them it's a surprise party in honor of the new baby, and they don't know in advance what they're going to see." "It should be fine." "Excellent." I concluded after leaving the lawyer's office off. I made a few phone calls and invited everyone except Mary to come to the surprise party in Julius's honor. Mary, of course, would tell Steve, and then he would know something was up and wouldn't go at 10:45 Tuesday morning. I called Mary and asked her to meet me at our house for a little chat. I made everyone wait quietly in the yard until the party was all gathered for the party. I said Julia was resting inside, so we would sneak up and surprise her. Dave was also there with the divorce papers. We sneaked into the house unnoticed and headed for the guest bedroom. I swung the door open and we all yelled surprise, and there were many surprised faces both in the room and in the hallway. Mary immediately yelled at Steve. Julia's family started yelling at her. Julia started yelling at me. Steve tried to gather his clothes and jump out of the house, but his boss blocked the door and notified him afterward. Amidst all this chaos, Dave calmly walked over to Julia, who was sitting on the bed under a sheet and sobbing uncontrolled. "Julia Davis, you are hereby served with these divorce papers filed by your husband, John Davis. He is seeking a divorce on the grounds of adultery. Mr. Davis is not seeking any form of custody of the 4 children already born, or the child in your womb, as DNA testing has shown that Mr. Davis is not the biological father of any of the children, and a recorded phone conversation between you and Steve Wilson states that you intentionally prevented the children from being with Mr. Davis so that you could become pregnant by your lover. Mr. Davis is claiming 90% of the entire estate. A court date will be set for this case unless you accept the terms of these documents. Good day." Dave said. Dave delivered his speech in a loud, impassive voice, almost like a robot. He handed the papers to Julia and left. Both Julia and Steve lost their jobs. Steve divorced Mary. Julia's family, who always liked me, disowned her. I didn't get 90% in the divorce. I had to settle for 75.5%, but in a separate lawsuit, I got compensation from Steve for preventing me from having children. I love Julia with all my heart, and if I had acted quickly and made a claim against her from the first moment of suspicion, it surely would have broken my heart now. However, knowing the depth of her infidelity and treachery, it was easier for me to cut her out of my life. I still see her around town from time to time, and each time she tries to apologize to me, but I don't want to hear it. She cheated on me for years. She deliberately kept me from making her a child so she could have Steve's baby, and then made me believe I was the father. If it wasn't for the fact that I loved her so deeply, I'd want to see her dead, but no matter how much she abused me, I'll always have memories of the good times the kids were confused to learn that Uncle Steve was actually their father, and the cousins were their half-siblings. They all spent a lot of time in counseling because of this. And I'm sorry this happened to them, but it was another measure of Julia's revenge. She wanted Steve's kids instead of me, so now has to live with them hating her for what she did. They still call me Daddy when they see me. I stood at the window and watched as the car pulled into the driveway, turned right, and disappeared into the street. I wondered why I wasn't more upset. I had just watched 10 years of my life go away. Wasn't I supposed to feel something? Wasn't there supposed to be something other than a shrug? And well, I guess I should go take care of this dripping faucet. Turning around and heading for the kitchen, I replayed the events of the last half hour in my head. Upon returning from work, I found my wife Peggy sitting at the kitchen table with a full glass of wine. I knew something was wrong as soon as I saw her. First, she was home before me, whereas she usually didn't get home from work until a half hour to an hour after me. Secondly, there was nothing on the stove. And finally, a glass of wine Peg rarely drank. No sooner had I entered the room than she asked me to sit down, and she had something to say. I got a beer out of the refrigerator and sat down across from her. "Rob, I know you see this. Something unsynchronized has happened between us. In the last 6 months, I have no idea why we're drifting apart. I don't know if it has anything to do with me or you, but something is wrong. I tried to talk about it, but all I heard was that we're just going through a rough time and things will get better. I've decided that we need to break up. I'm not talking about divorce, just separation for a while. I think I need some space, Rob. I need to get away and look at my life and figure out what's causing the breakup between us. You can think about it too. Come on, Peg, it's not that bad. Sure, we have some problems. You can't have a marriage without them, but two people can't solve problems if they're away from each other and not talking. Talking isn't going to help Rob you. Only see one problem in our marriage according to you. Our only problem is that we don't make love. Your solution to the problem is for me to get naked and let you do whatever you want to me. As far as I'm concerned, there's more to it than that. We don't make love anymore because I don't want to. We don't snuggle together anymore because I don't want you to touch me. And I don't know why I don't want you to touch me. I still love you. I love you as much as I did the day we got married. But something is wrong, and I don't know what it is. I need some space, Rob. I need to be alone to figure it out. So you want to throw 10 years of marriage out the window? No, Rob. I just think we need some time apart. I've already packed my stuff in the car. I'll stay with my sister until I find a place of my own. I'll call you once a week to keep in touch. She got up and said I have to go. I told Mary I'd be there by 7. She turned and left without even kissing me goodbye. And that in itself told me everything. It didn't take long for word to spread that Peggy and I had broken up. Most of our friends sympathized with me and tried their best to cheer me up. Peggy would call me once a week and ask how I was feeling, and I'd say I was doing fine. And then I'd ask how she was feeling, and she'd say she was fine. Then I'd ask her if she was ready to come home, and she'd say, not yet. Peg had been gone for 6 weeks when I started hearing disturbing things like she had a boyfriend. I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to believe that it was just like she said, that she just needed some time alone to get her thoughts in order, and then she'd come home. I kept hearing different things, so I decided to check out the rumors. I would find out where Peg was staying, do a little investigation, and put an end to the rumors, but no one could tell me where she was staying, either couldn't or wouldn't. And I started to think that something about the situation stunk to high heaven. I had dinner with my friend Tom, and his wife Tanya voiced my concerns and let slip that I was going to hire a private investigator to find Peg and either confirm or deny the rumors. I saw Tom look at Tanya, and she gave him a slight nod. Save your money, Rob. Tom said the rumors are true. Most people who know you are in the know but won't tell. What's that Peggy left you to live with Adam White? Adam White. Who the hell is Adam White? I've never heard of him. He works with Peggy, and she just left me to live with him. That doesn't make any sense if she was going to do that. Why didn't she just divorce me? What's all this nonsense about separation, Rob? You know, Peg, she plans, makes backup plans, and then makes plans in case the backup plan doesn't work out. She's been dating White for almost a year, and I assume she's organized it so she can go home if life with White doesn't work out, and everyone knows it. But no one told me. My goodness, what a wonderful group of friends I have. I stood up, threw my napkin in the middle of the table, and said I'll walk myself, and walked out on the way home. I thought about what I had just learned: no sex with Peg for over a year because she didn't want to make love to me. No snuggling with me for over a year because she didn't want me to touch her, and all the while she was tooting my horn like a fool. I sat at home like a good boy and behaved myself while I waited for the unfaithful __ to come back, and all my friends, my wonderful friends, knew about it, and they just let me sit there and stare at the walls and wait. Well, the waiting was over. The next morning, I made an appointment with the Corliss Detective Agency and gave them an advance. I told them where Peg and her boyfriend worked and told them I needed all the dirt they could get from me, and then I went home and started making a list of everything I needed to do to break my relationship with Peg. I'll wait until I get the report from the detective agency, but when I get it, I'll have the list. And I'll be ready once the list was made. I leaned back in my chair and thought about something else I needed to do. I hadn't had sex in almost 16 months because Peg had turned me down for a year, and then the separation, I'd been a perfectly faithful husband. But now that I knew what Peg was doing, I was damn sure I wasn't going to stay chaste any longer. I was sitting at the kitchen table sipping a beer and making plans to end the long dry spell when I remembered what Tom had said about Peg. She had planned the whole thing, having lived with her for so long. I knew it was true to me. That meant she had plans for this. Plans. Based on how she thought I would react to it, and the biggest plan was how to shove it up my ass if she decided that living with White was what she really wanted. I could see that she was watching me, so that if I went out dip the wick, she could use it against me in the divorce. Suddenly the list I had made was useless because she could plan my reaction exactly that way. The new list was taking shape. I could see that a lot of the things I wanted to do needed to be done right now, not left until the last minute. And there were some things I could do to shove it up Peg's ass and make her bleed. I smiled at the thought and wondered if she had a plan for such an eventuality. The next morning, I went to the bank to deposit my check, and while I was there, I checked the safe that Peg and I had. I could see from the register that Peg seemed to check the box at least once a week, and I could see that she was watching me, and that at the first sign that I was onto her, she would respond. I thought about that for a minute, and then I took the 5 certificates of deposit out of the plastic envelopes, went upstairs, and used the bank's copy machine to copy all 5 and then put the copies back in the envelopes in the box. Unless Peg took the discs out of the envelopes to check them, she would never know about the switch then. Since I knew Peg was checking me out, I took my passport out of the box and carelessly mentioned to the woman at the bank as she put the box back that I was going to Mexico for a fishing trip. I walked out of the bank with 5 CDs in my pocket. I went to the bank an average of 2 times a week, and each visit I cashed in 1 CD, paid an early withdrawal fee, and then stashed the cash when I got home. I didn't believe in credit cards because I thought you could easily get into trouble with them, so I had an American Express in my name on which the full balance is paid when you got the bill, several gasoline company credit cards, and 1 Visa card with a low limit. Peg, on the other hand, had a good half-dozen credit cards in her name, and some of them had high limits. I knew the limits because I paid the bills every month, made a list of the balances on the accounts, and set it aside. I sat down and made a list of all the things I wanted to have, and then I went online, and over the next 2 weeks I started spending money on Peg's credit cards. She would be saddled with credit card debt when I left, and I intended to see to it that it was substantial. I upgraded my computer and got a new Dell with all the accoutrements. I bought a Remington 700 on eBay and a whole bunch of other stuff like a digital camera and a modern phone that did everything but make scrambled eggs. The house belonged to Peg. It had been left to her by her parents, so I had no rights to it, but we used it as lateral for an open line of credit when we put in the pool and hot tub, and both of our signatures were on the account. We paid off everything we borrowed, but the line of credit was still open. If I timed it right, I could draw the line before she realized what I was doing. I used to wonder why, when she decided we needed a trial separation, she packed up and left me in her house instead of asking me to leave. Now I knew if I was in the house, I was obviously waiting for her return. I was seeing the separation as something temporary from her point of view. Then I closed my 401k at work, paid my fine, and then put the money away. Then I leaned back in my chair and waited for the private investigator's report. The only thing I couldn't figure out was how to discreetly complete it. I couldn't have anyone watching my search. I decided that on weekends I would have to get out of town for fishing. She knew I liked to fish and that I did it often, and she knew from the catches I brought home that I did go fishing, so I doubted she would pay a private investigator to follow me. She doesn't need to get too carried away right after all. Wasn't I a fool? Hadn't she been messing with my head for over a year? It was Friday, and I was just about to leave work when I got a call from Tanya asking me to stop by their place on the way. I tried to refuse, but she told me it was very important, so I said I would come over when I walked in. She let me in and led me into the living room where I found Tom sitting in a soft armchair. He stood up and extended his hand to me. I shook it, and then he motioned for me to sit down and make myself comfortable while he got me a beer. Tan needs to talk to you, Rob, and you need to know that I agree 100% with what she's going to say. He left the room and headed for the kitchen, and I looked questioningly at Tanya, and she said, "You're going to need some beer." Tom came back and handed me a Bud Light and said, "I've got some things to do, and I probably won't be back until midnight. I'll see you later." And he headed for the front door, and I heard it open, and then closed behind him. The door closing was the signal for Tanya to start talking. "Rob, you heard us when you ran away from us the night you were here for dinner." I started to say something, but she held up her hand and said, "Let me finish. You were right, but it still hurt in our defense. All I can say is that we really like you and we didn't mean to hurt you. It's made a little more complicated by the fact that Peg and I are friends too, and we were hoping she would get her act together and come home to you where she belongs. We know you love her, or at least you did, but we didn't know if that was enough for you to forgive her. So we kept quiet. If you were together again, you wouldn't need to worry about forgiveness and forgetting. That's our apology. But it's only part of why Tom and I wanted you to stop by. We know you, Rob, and we know what kind of guy you are. You wouldn't cheat on your wife like you wouldn't rob a bank. How long has it been since you last had sex?" The question caught me off guard for the first time. I noticed how Tanya was dressed a deep-cut blouse that showed off ample cleavage, a short skirt and high heels that showed off marvelous legs, and friend or no friend, I couldn't help but get a boner. Then I remembered Tom's comment, "I'm 100% on board," and I had an idea where things were going. In a muffled voice, I said, "It's been a year and a half." She leaned toward me and I peeked under her blouse as she said, "Helly, I'd like to change that. Rob Tom is my friend Tanya. I can't do this to him." I started to get up, but she grabbed my arm and pulled me down. "Tom's fine with it, Rob. That's why he left to give us some alone time. It's not a pity, __, or a mercy, __. Rob, Tom and I have been discussing this for months. You have what we need, so hopefully I can help you and you can help us." "I don't understand. Honestly, Rob Tom is infertile, and we want a baby. We want you to give it to me." I was stunned. I sat there staring at her in a daze. When I finally found my voice, I said, "You just said you know I'm not cheating on Peg." "Yes," she said, putting her hand on the lump on my pants. "But that was before you knew what Peg was doing now. You know you're free from your vows to her, but why me? We want it to be someone we know, not some anonymous sperm donor. We also want the father to be a part of the baby's life. You'll be the godfather, and you'll always be there for him. Like Uncle Rob." "That doesn't make any sense, Tanya." "It does make sense. What if something happens to me and Tom, who better to take care of the baby than Uncle Rob? On the other hand, God forbid the baby needs a liver transplant or something, and even if we did, would he help if we were on a waiting list? How long would we have to wait to find a donor who was a match? No, Rob, we've thought this through. We want you to be part of our family. On the other hand, you're not going to tell me you don't find me sexy, are you?" He squeezed the hard lump in my pants and said, "That speaks volumes about your reaction." And then she knelt down in front of me and pulled my zipper down. "There are advantages to being the father of my child, Rob. We'll have to make love many, many times to make sure I get pregnant. I won't limit you to the days when I'm most fertile. In fact, I won't even tell you when they are. It could take weeks. Rob, weeks and weeks, and you've been without sex for a long time. We help each other." She said now we can go to the bedroom and do some serious procreation. I kissed Tanya one more time before I went home, and before she let me out the door, she kissed me and thanked me for what I had just done. I'd like to do this every day until I get pregnant, but Tom is used to making love 3 or 4 times a week, and while he doesn't mind us seeing each other, I won't offend him. Call me tomorrow. Okay, all the way home, I thought about what had just happened, and as I pulled into the driveway, it occurred to me that if Peg was watching me, she would find out about my visits to Tom and Tanya and notice that Tom had left, and I had stayed a few more hours. The next morning, I called Tanya and explained my thoughts to her, but she told me not to worry because Tom had not left. He had gone down to his basement workshop and stayed there until I left. This information got me thinking it was one thing to make love to Tanya when Tom was gone, but could I do it if I knew he was in the house? Tanya must have known what I was thinking because she said, "Don't worry, Rob, everything will be fine, I promise." That same day, I got a call from Tom inviting me to have a drink with him after work. It was a bit awkward. Try sitting down with a guy you've known for 20 years, who's a good friend, and whose wife you just had a consensual __. With he must have known what I was thinking, so he got right to the point. "I know this is awkward for you, Rob. Hell, buddy, it's awkward for me, but I have to talk to you about the situation we're in first of all, and I told you this when I left you and Tanya alone. I agree 100% with all of this. I mean, also, Tanya didn't tell the whole truth. I know she told you about wanting a child and that I was infertile, but she didn't tell you everything else, honestly. Buddy, I can't get it up. I couldn't make love to Tanya for over a year. Oh my God, that's why she was so hot last night. She was playing catch-up. And telling me she didn't want to hurt Tom was her way of covering for his inability. She didn't want me to know he was impotent because she didn't want me to think badly of him as a man. What a difference between her and Peg. Tanya put Tom first, even in difficult circumstances, while Peg thought only of herself. I don't know if you got it last night, Tom continued, but Tanya is a very sexy person. My inability to perform had her climbing the wall. She tried her best to keep it together, Rob, but sooner or later she was going to cheat on me. I know it seems cruel, but it was inevitable. I know she loves me and will do everything she can to hide her cheating from me. How can I not understand if she slept together? She wouldn't be climbing the walls anymore, and I would notice I love her. Rob, that woman is my life. If I didn't have her, I'd just die. That's the problem. If she slips away and cheats on me behind my back, I can't live with her. I'd know why she did it, and I'd understand why she did it, but I can't live with that kind of dishonesty. The only solution, at least as far as I could see, was to do it openly, but Tanya isn't the kind of woman who will agree to take a lover and go into the bedroom while I sit in the living room and watch TV while she... ... She could probably do it with a stranger in a motel room when I don't know, but she couldn't just do it with a guy when I'm around. And then with another guy the next week, and another guy the week after that. We needed someone steady, someone we both loved and felt comfortable with. We sat down and made a list of possible candidates, but we couldn't agree on anyone. We kept coming back to you, but we were afraid that if we started with you and then Peg came home, it would stop, and we'd have to start all over again. And you can rest assured Peg will eventually come back to you. Everyone who knows Adam White knows he's an ... And Peg will soon find that out and come home to you, sure that you have no idea what she's been up to. I can't understand why she thinks you're so stupid. I can only guess that she thinks you love her so much that it would never occur to you that she might be up to something. I had to chuckle. She pretty much understood me correctly because that's how it was. And it was only because the separation dragged on and on that I finally sensed something was wrong. Well, now you know, and I know that now Peg is history. Even if she doesn't know it, I know you won't take her back under any circumstances. It freed up Tanya and me to approach you, Tanya, and I want Rob's baby, and Tanya needs sex. And until the doctors find and fix my problem, someone else has to provide that sex life for her. I know it sounds stupid, but you making love to my wife is going to save my marriage. You just need to get used to the idea that I know, and that there is nothing wrong with me. I didn't know what to say. This was all so out of the ordinary that I found it hard to believe. Tom stared into his glass and then looked at me and said, "It kills me that I can't take care of my wife, Rob, but if I lose her, it will kill me, and instantly I need you to do this for me, friend. I really do. Can I count on you to do that?" I stared at him for a few seconds, then nodded affirmatively. On Sunday, I invited Tom, Tanya, and 3 other couples over for a barbecue, and when the other couples left, Tom went into the study and played on my computer while Tanya and I went upstairs to my bedroom. By the time I had undressed, Tanya was lying on the bed with her legs spread wide and begging me to hurry up. After an hour, Tanya looked up at me and said, "And Peg got away with it. That woman must be crazy or stupid." I could see that Tom knew what he was talking about, that Tanya was very sexy. She barely pulled away from me a 3rd time before I walked her and Tom to the car. Tom shook my hand. Tanya kissed me on the cheek, and we all agreed that the day had been a success and that we should do it again soon. Any observer would have assumed we were talking about a barbecue. Monday afternoon, I met with Abbott of the chorus agency, and handing me the report, he said, "Every time I do one of these things, I hope it's just a misunderstanding and that nothing is going on, but there's no doubt about it here. Your fee also covers our appearance in court on your behalf if what you decide to do goes to trial." I shook his hand, walked out of his office, and on the way home, I wasn't at all as pissed off as I thought I would be, probably because I had already accepted that it was true. And by the time I got the report, I had it all sorted out in my mind. What am I going to do about this situation? Nothing that I hadn't already done. The only thing I had to do was to get the line of credit in place in time so that Peg wouldn't find out about it until it was too late. I'll meet with a lawyer and get the paperwork done, but I won't file it until I'm ready for the next 5 weeks. We met with Tom and Tanya 3 or 4 times a week, either at their place or mine. They started a rumor that I was going through a rough patch and that they were spending time with me trying to cheer me up. P called me every week. But I stopped asking how she was feeling, and when she was coming home finally, I'd had enough. I wrote checks on the line of credit, and as soon as they ran out, I found an apartment, moved out of the house, and served Peg with divorce papers. Instead of adultery, they cited irreconcilable differences. I did this so that Peg wouldn't know I knew about White. She'll see it as my way of encouraging her to decide to come home. She'll call me, write some nonsense about me overreacting, and then probably suggest we meet somewhere for drinks and dinner where she'll try to calm me down and talk some sense into me. I'll agree to meet her, listen to her, and then tell her I'll think about it. That will give me a few days to clear my line of credit and clear my checking and savings accounts. It went exactly as I had envisioned. First, she called me and told me I was being unreasonable, that there was no need to get lawyers involved. I told her I was tired of the neither fish nor fowl situation. You don't want to be with me, so it's time for me to accept that and move on. I agreed to meet her at Angelo's. It was the first time I'd seen her since she left me, and she looked good. I would miss her thunderstrike me. I really do, because it was obvious to me that I still loved her. But even if she came back to me, I knew I could never live with her again. But I didn't tell her that. Instead, I sat there and listened to her feed me a line of __. She's been seeing a shrink, and that shrink has been helping Peg understand blah, 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 and Peg is making good progress, and all she needs is a little more time. I know this is hard for you, baby, but it's hard for me too. Please, baby, just give me a little more time. I said I would think about it and let her know. I waited 2 days and then called my attorney and told him it was time to move on to step 2. He canceled the divorce papers and sent Peg a notice that the filing was canceled. Peg called me from work, thanked me, and told me I wouldn't regret it. I smiled, knowing I wouldn't regret it, but she didn't know why. But she would find out soon enough. That night, I had dinner at Tom and Tanya's, and after dinner, Tanya and I retreated to her bedroom. And when Tanya spread a blanket for me, she said, "Can we make love tonight instead of having sex? I'd like to make love to the father of my child. Are you sure?" Positive. The home test showed me on Tuesday, and the doctor confirmed it this afternoon. You're going to be a daddy. We only did it once that night, but it was a long, slow, and very enjoyable session when it was over. I told her that I probably wouldn't see her again soon. I'm going to finish this farce with Peg and White this week, and I may have to go out of town for a while. Don't do anything too drastic, love. I need my baby's father around. This must be about Tom. You need to start thinking like that. You know what I mean, lover? Just because I got you doesn't mean I don't need you anymore. Adam White was a member of the Fraternal Order of Eagles, and he hadn't missed a meeting since being elected Sergeant at Arms. He left Wednesday's meeting in good spirit, for after talking to several of the most influential members, he believed he had a chance if he ran for a higher office in the order. In an equally good mood, he got out of the car in the parking lot of his house. He locked the car door, turned around, and felt a blinding pain before everything around him went black. He was found by a neighbor who called 911, and the paramedics who responded to the call took him to the emergency room at the hospital, where it was discovered that both of his arms and both of his legs were broken, and his genitals were damaged so severely that both of his testicles had to be removed. He was in great pain when he opened his eyes and saw that he was in a hospital room and found that he could not move. He had plaster casts on his arms and legs and was in action. He saw Peggy standing next to his bed with a look of horror on her face before he passed out again. Of course, I wasn't there, but I got a full description of what happened when a man entered the room, walked over to Peg, who was standing next to the bed and looking at White. The man asked if she was Margaret Olson, and when she said yes, he handed her some papers and told her she had been served. She looked confused as she opened the envelope and saw that she was being sued for divorce, only this time the grounds were infidelity. She looked at the word infidelity, and then at the wreck lying on the bed in front of her, and her face lost all its color and took on a frightened expression. When she realized what it meant, she moaned, "Oh my God," and then sat down in a chair and cried. The police asked me where I was that night. Turns out I was at a poker game that started an hour before the Eagles meeting and went on for another hour after White went into the hospital. Peg paid for my alibi, even though she didn't know it. The guys were on my side and would have done it for free, but I used her credit to show my appreciation. Home Shopping Network took her Visa card number for the digital cameras I gave Bill, and Steve eBay took her MasterCard for the laptop I gave, and the 19-in flat panel monitor I gave Phil. It even paid for the aluminum baseball bat. I took a 2-month vacation. When the police were satisfied that I had nothing to do with White's misfortune, I went fishing in Mexico before I left. I told my lawyer not to push for a divorce, but to just leave things as they were until Peg started fighting back. Then quit. We would stay married, but I would have nothing to do with her. I called Tom and Tanya once a week to see how things were going, and they told me that Peg was back in the house. And as far as I could tell, true love must not have been in Peg and White's equation, because she never went back to him after the day she was served. Next to his hospital bed, the credit card bill started coming in, and she must have discovered that the savings and checking accounts were empty. The line of credit was tied up, and the CDs in the safe deposit box were fake because Peg was desperate to find me, and no one could tell her where I was. My boss, who knew the whole story, told her I was gone. He told her I just showed up one day, told her I was leaving, and asked for my check. Basically, he made her believe I left without warning. He didn't tell her that. But he made her believe it after calling my attorney and demanding that he set up an appointment with me. She found out that I had dropped the divorce proceedings, paid him off, and that he no longer represented me. She had no choice. 4 months after I left to go fishing, she declared bankruptcy. She eventually lost her house and had to ditch her Lexus and start driving a used Geo. When I got back from Mexico, I rented an apartment on the other side of town and tried to stay away from places where she could see me. Tanya was 5 months pregnant and looking even hotter than before, and we picked up where we left off this time. We didn't have to worry about whether anyone was watching me, and 2 or 3 times a week she slept over at my place or I at hers. Peg found out about my return 2 months later, and one day when I came home from work, I found her waiting for me in the parking lot. She got out of her car and headed toward me, but I ignored her, got into my car and drove out of the parking lot in my rearview mirror. I saw her rushing to her car and slowed down so she could keep me in sight. I would talk to her, but not in the parking lot at work. I drove so she could easily follow me, and about 10 minutes later pulled into the parking lot at Bud's Grill Bar when she parked. I was already inside and sitting at the bar ordering a Bud Light. She walked in, looked around, saw me, and headed towards me. She was already mumbling something as she approached. "Don't think you can run away from me, you bastard." I know Peg, and so I knew what she would do, so I turned around on the stool and caught her hand. I squeezed it as hard as I could, and she yelped in pain when I said, "I have every reason to want to hurt you, Peg, so you'd better not push me too hard. Keep your hands to yourself unless you want to feel real pain." I let go of my wrist and said, "I wasn't running from you. I was going slow and careful so you could follow me here. I wasn't going to air your dirty laundry in the parking lot where I work. It doesn't matter here because everyone here already knows you're a __. I want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to you. I've heard enough of your lies. I want my money back. What money is that, Peg? You owe me the money you took for the house, and half of everything else was mine, and I want it. Well, you're not going to get it." Peg, my position on this is that it's compensation for what you did to me. What do lawyers say when they sue? Compensation for pain and suffering and loss of marital rights. I think what I got almost covers the pain and suffering I went through. I didn't have sex for a year and a half while you gave it to someone else, and I was humiliated when everyone I knew looked at me like I was a stupid cockled dam. You rob? You made me lose my parents' house. Come on, Peg. It couldn't have meant that much to you since you went to live with another man. What's he got to do with it? I want my money. Here's the news, Peggy. You're not getting a dime. From me, you tried to __ me, but you got caught and I made you pay live with it. We'll see what the court says. It doesn't matter what it says. Peg, here's how it's going to work. You'll have to hire a lawyer and sue me so the court can order a division of property. Once you sue, I'll counter-sue. A good lawyer can drag out a case for 6 to 8 months, and all that time you'll be paying your lawyer. Can you afford to pay him without getting anything? I have all the evidence I need to fight you in court, and if I win, you get your ass kicked. The worst-case scenario for me is that I get ordered to divide the assets. I say, "Okay, judge," and I walk away. You and your attorney wait and wait and wait for the money. But the money doesn't come. You call me, but I don't answer the phone. So the lawyer you're still paying goes back to court and gets a court order directing me to pay. By such and such a date, you and your lawyer wait and wait and wait, and when the deadline comes, you still don't get a dime from me. Your attorney billing you for your time goes back to court and gets a judgment against me. I have no savings or checking accounts to close my car as leased, so nothing for you there. I live in a furnished apartment, so you can't get anything there. All you can do with a judgment is steal my paycheck, and the first time I get a paycheck that's been stolen, I'm out of a job. So what do we have here? Peg, good years of attorney fees out of your pocket, all for maybe $200 out of one paycheck. All that's left is to go back to the judge and have him threaten me with jail for contempt of court if I don't do his bidding. All you'll get, Peg, is a postcard from me from some little fishing village in Mexico where I'll live until my money runs out, and thanks to you, I have something else. Face it, Peggy, you __. Me, you got caught, and I got even. Consider yourself lucky. Think about what happened to your boyfriend and consider yourself very lucky he lost his balls, and now he'll never be able to sleep with another man's wife. You, on the other hand, can still get laid by anyone I knew. I knew you had something to do with what happened to Adam. What you think you know and what you can prove are two very different things, Peg. By the way, how's your novel coming along from what I hear? You haven't seen the poor guy since the first day he was in the hospital. What's the point? You took away the only thing he had. Oh, that's harsh, Peg. Even for you, it's true. He was very well endowed and was a wonderful lover. But eventually I'd get tired of him and come home. Oh, dear Peg, if I'd only known all this trouble could have been avoided. If I'd known you'd come back to me someday. Oh, __. I guess I've made a mess of things by my actions, haven't I? I'll have to take that regret to my grave. Oh, what a joyful life it could be if we communicated better. You can be such an __. Yes, Peg, and you're a worthless phony. I finished my beer, stood up and saying, "Bless you," and walked out of the bar. 3 days later, I was served with divorce papers citing irreconcilable differences. I made no objection, and she received half of the marital assets, and I was ordered to pay her back the money I had borrowed. I wished her luck in getting anything, and threw the final decree in the trash. She must have believed me when I predicted to her how things would go, because I never heard from her again. One interesting thing came out of this mess. Everyone was in agreement that White was an __, but even __ can have a friend or two, and one of them was Peggy's boss. He didn't like the way she treated White after his misfortune, so he fired her well. Not exactly fired, the recession called for downsizing. And Peggy was downsized, but everyone knew she was fired. She couldn't find work in our area, so she moved to California where she had relatives, and no one, not even her sister, has heard from her since. Plus, 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 plus. There is one more chapter to this story. It was a sad ending, but at the same time, a glorious beginning. Tanya had given birth to a beautiful baby girl, and Tom loved her and spoiled her terribly. Uncle Rob was a regular visitor and spent many, many hours crawling around on the floor with little Martha. Tom never told Tanya and me the whole story. He knew why he had erectile dysfunction, but kept it hidden even from Tanya. He had cancer that wasn't treated in time, and the cancer spread after his funeral. Tom handed me an envelope. On the front of the envelope was written for Rob, only... I looked at her and she shrugged and said, "I have no idea, it's addressed to you. So I don't know what's inside." I opened it and read, "Hey buddy, if you're reading this, I'm leaving. There was a reason I chose you. Yes, it was me, not Tanya, to be the father of our child. I knew I wouldn't be there for them, and I wanted someone I could trust to be there to watch over them. I knew I could count on you. Don't let me down, brother. Take care of our girls." I held out the letter to Tanya, and she read it and cried. I hugged her to comfort her, and she asked me what I was going to do. I would do exactly what he suggested, take care of my girls. 6 months later, Tanya and I got married.